welcome to our show for the love of animals. We're delighted that you joined us today. We have a great show for you. I'm Darlene Pigford.
And I'm Greg Bauer, and we want to tell our viewers about a couple of upcoming shows.
Okay.
After you see this show today, there will be a part 2
really?
to this show. So that should be anything we don't cover, we'll get then. And also, show and doing some things with aquariums.
Ooh, sounds great.
We've got a fascinating show today, Darlene. What do we have on tap?
Well, our viewers already know, if there's a part 2, you've got to have part 1
right.
about the amazing monarch butterflies.
Yes.
So that's what our 2-part show is on. Please introduce our guest, Greg.
I'll be happy to. Down on the end of the table there is Bill Black, who is from Paducah here. He's a butterfly expert, a lepidopterist, and all kinds of different things. And Bill, thanks so much for taking time out today to share some beautiful things and information about the monarch butterfly.
Thank you so much for coming, Bill. In fact, it's a return trip. We're glad to have you back.
Well, I've been looking forward to this.
Bill, how did you get interested in moths and butterflies?
When I was a grade school boy, 5th grade or so, a friend of mine received a butterfly collector kit for a birthday present from a cousin, and that boy got 2 others, one of whom was myself interested, and the 3 of us rode bikes around the neighborhood with nets, catching butterflies for a couple of years. And
really?
I also remembered, in particular, relating to the monarch that we'll be talking about today, in about that same age, I remember reading in a newspaper that we had called my Weekly
Reader.
Oh, yes.
Oh, we are dating ourselves.
It covered many interesting subjects, one of which was a story of a college professor in Canada named Urquhart, who was trying to find where the monarchs migrate to, where their destination was
when you
for
were
spending the winter.
in grade school.
That was about 1955 or so. And he'd been doing this already for some years. And eventually, in 1975, he found
he did find
these sites where they overwinter.
And
well, that's what got you started. Well, let's get started. Why don't you describe the monarch butterfly for us?
All right. Monarch is believed to be a descendant of a tropical butterfly, and that in the beginning of its existence did not migrate the way we associate its migration now. That it's believed that it evolved, it changed gradually to be able to accomplish these migrations in order to get to the more plentiful milkweed that we have in the United States and Canada. Its home down in Mexico, about 100 miles west of Mexico City in the mountains there, is believed to have always been its epicenter.
And there are, do all of them look like this picture or what?
Pretty much. There's a great deal of close uniformity there. That one is a female, and the male has a couple of scent glands on its hind wings. I'll point that out later if we happen to get an image of one.
Now, is this an adult? This is the adult.
That's an adult of the insect, an adult butterfly, and it has come through stages before that. First it was an egg, then a caterpillar, then a pupa, where the caterpillar sort of looks dead and morphs into this encased creature, who gradually begins to look like a monarch butterfly, all wrapped up tightly. And then it emerges and is the adult then.
Well, it's beautiful. I can see one reason why it's so popular in the United States. Are there other reasons why it might be so popular?
Yes, it's plentiful. It's pretty much everywhere in the United States.
Is it in Canada also?
It is in the southern part of Canada. It follows the range of milkweed. Once it gets too far north for milkweed and that ceases to exist, the butterfly doesn't go up there.
Do we have any idea where the name monarch came from?
Well, yes. This is basically a Western Hemisphere butterfly. There are some small populations in other parts of the world.
Uh-huh.
But over here in the 1700s, there were a good many of the pioneers and the settlers here, colonists from Europe, came from Holland and from England.
Uh-huh.
And there was a monarch then, William of Orange, who started out as a monarch in Holland and then assumed the English throne.
Uh-huh.
And he was William of Orange, and the colors for his
Banner.
monarchy was orange and black. And,
Oh.
and so that's believed to be the origin of calling this butterfly the monarch.
Well,
by the way, it has a relative in Florida. The monarch does exist in Florida also, but it has a relative in the same genus, but a different species, and the common name for that relative, which is brown and black instead of orange and black, but it's so closely related, the veins and in every other way it looks the same. It's called the queen.
Oh, that's a species.
So that's a species.
Oh, okay.
They're both in the same genus, but they're in two different species within that genus, and there is another one or two species within the genus Danus, that the Latin word for that part of their family, the genus.
Well, now you say they're plentiful. What are their numbers, or approximately? What do we know about their numbers?
Their numbers have been as high as 1 billion in one season.
Okay.
North America wide. But now, and that was unusual. They might be 300,000 or no, excuse me, they might be 300 million in that same U.S. and Canada and Mexico. But their population has been dropping and very precipitously in the last 10 years, so that they have dropped from what they were at about 300 million to down to only 30 million or so.
Wow.
It's a huge drop and alarming.
Alarming in just in 10 years.
Yes.
I mean, that's...
And usually species, animals go extinct when their habitat is lost.
Right.
For various reasons.
And their food source. Yeah,
and
which
their
is the
food source, right. And its food source, of course, is milkweed. Milkweed is, we have an example.
Yeah, it's right behind you there.
We have, this is one of our common milkweeds, giant milkweed it's called, and that plant, some stay that size, but some plants will be twice that tall when they're mature in the
And this grows
autumn.
wild in most
This
places.
grows wild.
Do we have this here in Kentucky?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And
I haven't made many trips to the woods lately.
But another common milkweed that we have in Kentucky is referred to, its flowers are orange, bright orange, notably so, and it's referred to as butterfly weed or orange butterfly weed, but it's in the milkweed family. Its leaves don't look like that at all. They vary quite a bit, but the female can lay eggs on either one of those plants, and the larvae, when they hatch out of the egg, do just fine.
So, so they lay their eggs, and the young have to eat only on varieties of milkweed?
That's right.
No other plants?
That's right. And
wow.
That sounds very specialized.
Yes, it does.
But actually, there are probably 100 different species of milkweed in North America. And the monarch could make do, its caterpillar would do fine on any of them. But when you get outside that family, they can't live without being able to eat milkweed. Now that's a curiosity partly because milkweed is poisonous.
Yes, it is.
But this caterpillar has evolved to not be bothered by that poison. And it gives it an advantage, both as a caterpillar and subsequently as the adult butterfly, that if a predator, the most common predator of butterflies would be birds. If a bird eats a monarch, it makes them sick.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the poison is not so great that it would kill the bird usually, but if the bird didn't get sick and vomit, if he didn't vomit the monarch he had just eaten, then he might very well die.
So if he really ingested it in his system.
Yes. And there's a range of toxicity in the milkweed plants. Some are very poisonous, and some, very few are not poisonous. But the whole range between that exists, and the toxicity of the caterpillar that's eating that plant and the resulting adult is directly related to how poisonous the plant is. So sometimes they might eat a bird might eat a monarch that had whose caterpillar had eaten that rare non-poisonous milkweed, and it wouldn't make the bird sick.
Okay.
He'd have to eat another one that ate some poisonous milkweed to understand to stay away from monarchs.
Well, now you say the young eat on the milkweed. Do the adults also eat the milkweed, or do they feed on?
No, they don't. The adults' mouth parts are not suited for eating anything solid. They have a proboscis that acts kind of like a straw, very much like a straw, and they drink liquid nectar from flowers. Now they like the nectar from milkweed flowers, and they come out in the flowers come out in the autumn. And other butterflies, as well as bees, can drink that nectar, and it doesn't hurt them. For some reason, that nectar is all right for everybody.
Oh, okay.
But that's what the adult butterfly consumes, is the liquid nectar from flower. But it can drink nectar from many different species of flowers.
Okay, so once it's an adult, it can live off many other plants.
It's not limited to milkweed flowers.
Once it's an adult
zinnias,
butterfly.
Yeah, many of our garden flowers, zinnias are a very popular flower with almost all butterflies.
Oh, great.
And
how long do these butterflies live? After you reach, how long does it take to go from the beginning stage to the butterfly, and then how long do they live after that?
It would be about a month in the 3 immature stages.
3, okay.
Egg, chrysalis, egg, caterpillar, chrysalis, and then about a month for the adult. For each of the species, each of the generations that don't go on this long migration southwest into Mexico. And those adults live about a month, and they stay local. They don't migrate. In our area, we have 2 of those generations, and then the 3rd generation is the one that comes out in late August and in September, and it migrates to Mexico, and those adults live about 9 months. But about 5 of those 9 months are in a hibernating stage.
How unique. So in Kentucky, they go through a 1st generation, a 2nd generation, they stay here.
That's correct.
But they only live about a month, you see.
That's right.
Then the 3rd generation, then they go to Mexico, and there they live for, you say, 9 months, of which
they stay in Mexico in these hibernation concentrations, these overwintering sites in Oyamel fir trees on 12 mountaintops.
And they stay there for how long?
They stay there about 5 months.
Do they return? Does that generation?
They do start returning, but they don't make it all the way back.
Their children make it back?
Yes, they make it generally into northern Mexico and into Texas, and that's about as far as that worn out generation that has made. Those individuals made the trip from wherever they were in the north to Mexico.
Wow, what a trip we're making right here with all this information. What a unique species. Wow. I'm intrigued with what I'm learning here.
We are just getting started on this.
Yes, we are.
And we want to, for a moment, just take a short break and listen to a happy tale about a super little cat named Woody. And we'll be back in just a few minutes, but give a listen and I know you'll enjoy this tale.
Woody is a 12 or possibly 13-year-old short-haired male cat with tuxedo markings. His first 2 years were spent as a feral cat in the wilds of Lyon County, Kentucky. Darlene found him outside our house and fell in love with him. After several attempts, she was able to trap him and took him to a vet to have him checked out and neutered. When she brought him home, a friend advised her to let him go back into the woods. "If he's meant to come back, he will," said the friend. The release happened on Valentine's Day, and Darlene's heart was broken, fearing that she would never see him again. 9 days later, he came back to the house and has been there ever since as a wonderful companion to Darlene, Greg, and the other cats in the house. He had to learn how to play with toys and adjusted well to living inside. He always wants to know where Darlene is and is living proof that a feral cat can be housebroken to become a wonderful and loving companion.
We are just in the middle of a fascinating show about the monarch butterfly with our guest Bill Black. And how can our viewers get more information about the monarch butterfly, Darlene?
Well, first of all, Bill has recommended that you go to Google and then Google what?
Monarch Watch.
Monarch Watch.
Yeah,
and you get
monarchwatch.org.
Okay.
And it's sponsored by University of Kansas. They're in the major flume of migration of monarchs, and they've been doing this for a long time, probably 25 years.
And so they're kind of the experts on what's happening with the monarchs.
And they've amassed quite a lot of knowledge.
And there's another local expert by the name of Bill Black who has consented to give out his telephone number to interested parties who have questions about the monarchs. And Bill, you can be reached at
270-442-9587.
So all interested citizens and lepidopterists, if you have monarch butterfly questions, we are so fortunate to have the expert here in Paducah, Kentucky. Also, I'd like to remind our viewers we have a past show about Kentucky moths and butterflies that Bill did for us. So you can go to YouTube or to www.paducah2.org and search for The Love of Animals and Butterflies, and you will find the show that Bill did for us, specific to Kentucky.
And this was back from January of 2010.
Oh, yeah, that was a few years ago. So,
yes.
Okay. So, all right. Bill, I am just so fascinated with what I'm learning about these butterflies and the fact that they migrate. I guess this is one of the things that makes them so special. Do all butterflies don't migrate, do they?
That's correct.
Do any other species migrate?
There are some other species that migrate, but none of their migrations is as dramatic as this one.
Okay, then tell us, in the United States, I understand there's an eastern group and a western group. Tell us about their migrations in the United States.
That's right, and the demarcation is the Rocky Mountains.
Okay.
Ones east of the Rocky Mountains migrate to these sites in Mexico that I referred to earlier.
Okay.
About 100 miles west of Mexico City, 12 different mountaintops, and they are about 10,000 feet high in elevation.
And once they get there, what happens?
When they get there, they gather in these Oyamel fir trees. Look very much like we call it a big pine tree. They have needles that look like pine needles, and they stay in clusters that are so dense. And the book that you're showing there, it has a beautiful photograph of that.
Gorgeous.
That concentration. I would compare it to a swarm of bees that cling to one another, and deep in the center of that three-dimensional gathering of bees, they're holding on to the tree or to
and they hold on to each other.
Yes, and then most of them are holding on to one another. And
wow.
When these monarchs fold their wings behind their backs, that's how they normally rest. You can crowd an incredible number of them together. I remember reading in National Geographic in 1976, the year after they discovered where the monarchs were overwintering. Yes, that's a copy of it.
Here's a copy.
And the writer witnessed a branch break off out of a tree because of the weight of monarchs resting on the branch.
And a butterfly does not weigh that much.
And I recently saw that butterflies weigh a little less than 1/100th of an ounce.
Wow.
So they're pretty light, and to have that many, you can imagine what that concentration.
Well, how does that little light butterfly make it from Kentucky all the way down to Mexico?
Well, that's another source of wonder, and I think it's that the qualities that make us wonder about this butterfly and be so intrigued about it, even for a lifetime. I think that's part of the source of its popularity. But they've done experiments to know how this butterfly does this. I mean, it's incredible to me that in our area, 2 broods of this monarch, 2 generations, they live like a regular butterfly. They don't migrate. They stay right here in Paducah. And they live as an adult for only about a month. And then the 3rd generation here in Paducah makes this trip to Mexico, a 1,400-mile trip. That's a direct straight line trip. So they're really going further than that. And
are they fluttering their wings all the way?
And how do they know? You know, it has to be an instinctual ability, but they've never made that trip. And
how did they?
And there were 2 generations before them. Now down further south, they might have 3 or 4 generations before them, the migrating generation, that didn't take the trip either. So how does it even know to take the trip?
How does it even know where to go?
Parents and grandparents didn't take.
Wow.
But they, a lot has, in their navigation, the sun is involved there. There are many different theories. They've even considered magnetism in the mountains down there that may ultimately help them home into
those 12 mountains.
Tight area. Yeah, and they're rather close to one of the mountains where they go. But some interesting experiments have been done to test that. One involved catching monarchs and putting them overnight in the refrigerator, not the freezer, but the refrigerator. That doesn't hurt them. It's just like a cold night. And then letting them go the next day at different times. The ones they let go in the morning flew southwest the way they normally do. But the ones who were released in the afternoon, who had just been taken out of the dark refrigerator and thought it was sunrise.
Like hibernation, I guess.
Yes. They went northeast, exactly the wrong direction to be migrating. Then they got straightened out after that crazy mixed up day. But
so the
that
next
tells
day
you that they're navigating with the use of the sun's position. But see, that moves during the day, and that particular experiment took that into account.
Wow.
But so there are lots of things we don't understand about them yet.
Now, the butterflies, you said, Bill, east of the Rockies migrate to Mexico. Where do the monarchs that are west of the Rockies migrate to?
The monarchs west of the Rockies migrate to the coast, the southern half of the California coast on the Pacific Ocean. Of course, some of them are flying straight south, some of them are flying southwest, some are flying directly west, depending on where they are relative to those places. And what's interesting is that there aren't any Oyamel fir trees there.
Like there are in Mexico.
Like there are down in the mountains of Mexico. And they choose to overwinter in eucalyptus trees in crescent-shaped bays on the coast of California.
Really?
So what's especially curious to me is that the eucalyptus trees are not native to North America. That's an Australian tree that's been brought here. So I'm not sure that they know what species of tree they overwintered on,
or maybe
before
it fooled
the
them
eucalyptus
somehow?
trees were brought here.
Are those two trees related? Are they in the same?
No, they're not.
I didn't think.
The OUL fir and the eucalyptus trees
Don't
are
sound
not,
like they're in the
not
same
kin to
family.
one another. They'd be very distant. Well, not even any kinship I would consider, being on different continents. But the eucalyptus trees does flourish in some of our habitats here and in Africa and around the world when it has. It's a pretty hardy tree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember in the literature you gave me to read that in the last 10 years we've lost 90% of the monarchs on the eastern side and 50% of the monarchs on the rocky side.
Okay, now I'm not familiar with that statistic.
It was in some of the literature.
Okay, well I wouldn't doubt that because the ones in Mexico are under some more severe handicaps.
It was a longer trip, right?
Yeah, longer trip, but also it's harder to police those overwintering sites. And the OUL fir is a type of tree that timber people like to cut, and that's the biggest threat to their habitat there.
Yeah, but you just say
But
Mexico has done a lot to preserve them, though, haven't they?
Yes, they have. Mexico has taken some good steps, and they have good laws. But these areas are very remote, and so it's hard to police them.
Right.
Yeah. And a log rustler can get in and in a night do some damage.
Well, Bill, in our last point of summary, we better tell people where we got these beautiful pictures.
That's Wendell Turley's book. I only recently have found out about it through a friend, and Nancy and I liked it so well we bought that copy ourselves.
Well, thank you. We've enjoyed it. It is beautiful. Yeah. It is a beautiful book.
And we're at a point where we're going to have to stop for
Greg,
today, but
time passes
so
fast.
We want our viewers to stay tuned in the future for part 2, and we'll continue our discussion. So, Bill, thank you so much for sharing this information with us today. It's just fascinating about this monarch butterfly. And so, for the moment, in closing,
I'm Darlene.
And I'm Greg. And asking our viewers to do what we want you to every day. Give your pet a little extra love today and every day. See you next time.
Watch for those butterflies in your backyard. Bye.